Good morning. That's the regular council meeting for July 2nd of 2024, and I will now call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples, and the town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. This was pretty evident when you went to the historic park on the weekend of where the history of Rocky Mountain House comes from, so it's kind of cool. Adoption of the agenda, to adopt the agenda for July 2nd, 2024. We do have an item to add to closed session 14.6. It will be FOIP section 17, and it will be just personal privacy. Is there any other additions or deletions from the agenda? And then could I have a motion? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Caprero.
Thank you. I will make a motion to adopt the agenda for July 2nd, 2024 as amended.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments about that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And none, that's carried. We have no delegations today, so we're going on to adoption of previous minutes. Is there any changes to the meeting minutes for June 18th, 2024? Would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, I will make a motion to adopt the minutes of the June 18th, 2024 meeting.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call it to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that's carried. So we have no delegation business today, so we're moving on to 7.1, old business, the RFD for the Audit Committee bylaw. So this would be the third reading of the bylaw. Would anybody like to make a motion? Councillor Chappelle.
I will so move third and final reading of that bylaw.
Thank you very much. There's no further questions or comments on the motion. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'll be voting against this. Again, I feel that it is what we're doing anyways, and I don't see it necessary that we add another extra committee when we're doing the job at regular meetings anyway. So,
thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the motion? And seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And those opposed? And so that motion has been carried. Moving forward in the agenda, we have 7.2, the RFD for service level locations. And in our package, we have a list of possibilities. And that's what we'll be discussing. Is that correct? Mr. Kraus, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Your Worship. So Council has asked administration to review costs for possible locations for service level reviews within a 200-kilometer radius. Ms. Breeze reached out to Drayton Valley, Sundre, and Red Deer for possible locations, and those costs are included in Council's package. So along with keeping it local, just using our own facilities. So I'll leave it up to Council for discussion.
Well, thank you very much. Seeing as no one has their light on, I have a comment. I would certainly prefer to keep it local so we can, save the costs of hotels and travel, and just do it like we did the previous year, and the year before. There was another year that we had done it locally, so that seemed to work fine. And it saves the taxpayers money, even though it's got some budgeting for this type of stuff. I still think it should be a cost savings. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Or Councillor Phillips?
Yes, thank you. So we go to conferences all the time outside of town. I don't see this being any different. I've been to both. I've been to ones in town. I've been to one of these that have been done out of town. And I find the ones that are out of town are definitely more productive because we're not going home at the end of the night. We're actually spending time together after the meeting. And sometimes the best ideas come after the meeting. It doesn't actually come during the meeting. It comes after the meeting when you're sitting around and just, you know, discussing random things. So to me, again, I know we can do it in town and we can do a good job, but I think if we go out of town, we can do better than good. And if better is possible, is good enough? So to me, I think I would prefer to have this out of town, especially for those members that have not seen it out of town, and then they can make their own decision whether it's beneficial to be in or out of town.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Phillips. And we did, in our first year, I believe, make that motion to do in town, the next year out of town, and alternate back and forth like that. I do have, I guess, a concern on the choices that are there, that there still may be members in the group that would choose to come back home at night, which would defeat the purpose of being there as a group throughout the day and throughout the evening. So to me, I just, unless we're getting 100% buy-in from everybody to be there out of town and to want to be there out of town, I guess I would question, or put that question to council to make sure that we're getting 100% commitment and not planning on driving back, because it's only, if we're in Sundre, well, what's the point of staying? We might as well come home, because the distance is there to be able to come home. So unless we have 100% buy-in from council, I see no reason to go out of town.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any? Oh, sorry, Councillor All, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Len, with the productivity of going out of town, but I also 100% agree with Councillor Hutchinson. If it's not a 100% group that is on board with going out of town, then it defeats the purpose and we won't get the results we're looking for. So if it's not 100%, then there's no point in going out of town.
Okay, so to move the discussion along a little further, it's a hard no for me to go out of town. And so, with that being said, I don't know if anybody else has an opinion, but then you're only 6 out of 7, and then there's 1, 2, 3 choices, or 4 choices. But that's what we're to decide today, what our choices are. What does everybody else think? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I guess I would ask the question then to you, why, I understand your reasoning behind not spending the money, although we did make the changes to be in town one year, out of town another year. So what then I would ask the question on why you feel you couldn't commit to spending the time with your colleagues to move the community forward in a positive way.
So thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. I do want to move the community ahead in a positive way. I don't think having supper and staying in a hotel is going to build any camaraderie or come up with any better ideas than we do during business hours. I have responsibilities, and we are out of town an awful lot, more than what people realize with all our conferences. And so I think it's just a money thing, and that the reasoning is not sufficient enough for me to want to go out of town. I went to Drumheller, unlike Councillor Phillips, who wasn't able to go that year, and I felt very strongly, and so did a previous councillor member who attended, that it wasn't and that's how we left feeling, so. Counselor Hutchinson?
Thank you. I guess I would like to say that the out-of-town events that we go to, we are each choosing to go to those out-of-town events, conferences, whatever else it may be. Those are choices that we're making. Our service level review is one of, or I feel, between service level and budget are the two most important items that this council needs to be all on board with. And to have that evening time, like Councillor Phillips said, to be able to just have a casual conversation with each other, and the camaraderie that you mentioned isn't there, is what we need to be building while we're out of town. Having said that, this is our last service level review, but I still feel that if we don't have 100%, I guess that's what it is.
Thank you, Counselor Hutchinson. Counselor Caprero?
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Phillips. I have done both now as well, and I do feel like I had gotten more out of being out of town in Drumheller. I really liked the camaraderie and the time spent together, both during the day and in the evenings. I guess where I differ a little bit is that, to me, it's not 100% buy-in that we're out of town or it's in town. I mean, I think we have the choice, and I would like to see it out of town just to continue to work on that camaraderie and spend that time with one another and spitball ideas and that kind of thing. But I mean, if someone doesn't want to stay because they have other things on their plate, I don't think that should necessarily stop the rest of us from taking part in that. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. So would anybody like to start discussion of the choices that the administration has provided us? Counselor Phillips?
I mean, looking at between Drayton Valley and Sundre, the biggest difference I see is that Drayton Valley actually has catering available with that hotel, whereas Sundre has coffee break service, but it doesn't look like they have catering, which would have to be arranged separately. So to me, that would tip, just because of that reason alone, would tip my scale towards Drayton Valley. Red Deer, I'm not as fond of Red Deer, just simply because part of going away to these conferences is you want to meet with that council. And I think we would have a much better opportunity to meet with the Drayton Valley or Sundre Council as opposed to the Red Deer Council if we went to Red Deer. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Counselor Phillips. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, so we're kind of still at an impasse then for discussion-wise. So I would prefer to do it locally and use local food services. I don't think it much matters between Drayton Valley and Sundre, but I do have because in Drumheller we didn't have catering service either. We did takeout from local restaurants. And then we went out to local bars, pubs for supper, and it was like a busy pub and drinking and all the things that, you know, make supper and camaraderie great. So I still think that we should do it locally, and that it doesn't matter about the catering. If we stay locally, we can use local restaurants and caterers, and that's a second benefit. And, you know, if we really wanted to do a meeting with Drayton Valley or Sundre or any of other communities, we just organize a day where we could have an afternoon where we went out to their community and had a conversation with them. Other communities do that sometimes. So I don't think it has to be 3 days overnight with all of our staff to visit with Drayton Valley or Sundre. I talk to both of them at events throughout the year. Myself, when you go to Alberta municipalities, you can easily find Sundre when you know who they are. And same with Drayton. So do we have any other questions or comments on that? Well, I make a motion then that we do it at the Subway Room for all 3 days in Rocky Mountain House. Do you have any questions or comments on that motion? So seeing no questions or comments on the motion on the table, I will call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And those opposed? And so that motion is defeated. So moving forward, somebody needs to make a motion or have some sort of discussion. Counselor Phillips.
Yes, thank you. I'll make a motion that we do the service level dates of October 9, 10, 11 in Drayton Valley.
Okay, so do you need the dates in there? We've already had a separate motion with the dates.
The dates are established, Your Worship, but
It's not going to matter if...
it's not going to matter
Okay.
because the dates are the same.
Thank you for the clarification. And so the motion on the table is to do it in Drayton Valley. All in favor of that motion? And those opposed? And that motion is now carried. So the service level review will be in Drayton Valley for October 9th, 10th, and 11th. And that concludes the business. So I do have an administration of inquiry. Is council available to meet with us while we're up there during that time?
Your Worship, we will have to check. That's one, we haven't done that because council didn't select a location, but we'll reach out to Drayton Valley. There's plenty of time to try to arrange something.
So I just, before you do that, is that what council would prefer to do, is to reach out to Drayton Valley and see if they're available for a meeting while we're in Drayton? I don't see anybody's light on. Counselor Phillips?
I would say yes. There's always benefit to meeting with other councils and listening to their successes and their challenges and how they're doing things and maybe doing things differently or better than us. So it's always a good chance to talk with another council.
Thank you very much. So then administration can go forward and see if they're available during that time. So I think that concludes 7.2, and we're going on to 8.1 for new business. And there's a notice of motion about tax incentives that Councillor Chappelle is bringing forward. And so, did you want to read your motion?
Yes, Your Worship. Let it be resolved that council instruct administration to prepare a report that provides options for property tax incentives for new greenfield, non-residential land development.
Thank you very much. And so this motion is on the table at this point. Are there any questions or comments about the motion? Councillor Phillips?
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that we should be discussing and should be talking about. We're different than the Highway 2 corridor. You know, when you're talking about Black Falls, Penhold, Lacombe, all of those places, we're a little bit different than those municipalities, and I think we need to do something different to potentially attract and or have our local landowners do something with their land. To me, this is something that I've heard a few times in the community that we should be looking at this, and I definitely think it's something that we should look at and support.
Thank you very much. If there's any other questions or comments about the motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that motion has been carried. There's no, I'm sorry, there's no deadline on the motion. Administration will just come back when it's available. Is that okay? Okay. Sorry, I missed that. We usually have a time, a date, a place, yeah. So moving forward in the agenda, we have correspondence for action. 9.1, invitation from Municipal Affairs to meet with Minister McIlver at AB Munis in Red Deer in the fall. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Councillor Chappelle?
I think we should move forward and make an appointment to visit with him, depending on how the review goes or what happens there. We may have questions of him. If we don't, then we just cancel. So at least get into the queue.
Okay, that sounds great. So did you want to make that as a motion, sir?
Yes, I'll make that as a motion that we set up an appointment to see Minister MacGyver at the AB Munis in Red Deer.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that's carried. 9.2, invitation from Town of Bowden Rodeo Parade, July 13th. And so the other ones, we haven't established the group yet, is that correct? That would be able to attend? So would anybody like to make a motion? Councillor Phillips?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to accept the invitation as information from the Bowden Days Rodeo Parade.
Thank you very much. Did we want to send a reply saying that we're unable to attend?
I don't know if we really need to, but okay. So then I'd like to amend my motion to send a letter of thanks to the town of Bowden for the invitation to attend Bowden Days Rodeo Parade and send council's regrets.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that's carried. So moving forward in the agenda, we have a similar invitation from Bentley for August 8th to 10th. And Councillor Schippelt, your light is on. Did you want to make
Yes,
that
I'll
motion?
make that motion. I'd like to mirror Councillor Phillips' motion, other than changing it to the town of Bentley. And
Thank you very
same
much.
motion.
Thank you very much. So if there's no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that motion has been carried. So moving forward in the agenda, we move to 9.4, and the dates were moved to July 3rd at 2 p.m., and that frees up my schedule personally, so I am able to attend that now. Does it change anybody else's schedule? Councillor Hutchinson, are you still able to attend?
Yes, I am, but I just wanted to say that I feel because this is strictly a PR event that really isn't even our event. I mean, it does affect us because we have people coming through Rocky visiting out there, but I feel quite strongly that I don't think that council, that we would need a resolution and council be remunerated for this. I think it should just be a PR and a choice. If we choose to go, we go, and not to get reimbursed for it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Musker?
Yeah, I would echo Councillor Hutchinson's, but I would ask if we could have access to the SUV to get out there.
Okay, so I believe last time that I attended an event like this, I hopped in with Clearwater County, and it was the council members from Clearwater County and our MLA. So it was like 40 minutes of uninterrupted council time with an MLA that has a big portfolio. And so I've already talked to them to see if they're going and asked if we would be able to hop on like we did last time, because I think that's just a really good way to go. So if that's all right with council, Councillor Hutchinson, did you reach out to anyone about that?
Yeah, I talked to the Rave yesterday, and as far as I know, she's going by herself. I don't know about any other, it didn't sound like any other counselors from the county were going, so we can certainly work that out, make those arrangements ourselves. But
Okay.
like Councillor Musker said, maybe just tentatively book the SUV
Okay.
for that.
So because it's summer holidays, if I go out to that, I'll probably make a day of it and do some other touring around. So I'll travel on my own for that event. So Councillor Hutchinson, and we're okay with people going for PR? Do we need a motion? I can make a motion that anybody who's able to attend that event can make their way there or travel with Councillor Hutchinson in the SUV. And it's a PR event, so it's an unpaid event. Any questions or comments on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? And that's carried, and thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, we have a 9.5. And so, Mr. Kraus, I'm not sure what resolution we're looking to. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
Your Worship, Councillor Phillips asked this to be on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you. So, okay, I'm probably going to get a little heated on this one because this is something that's been bothering me for a while. Last Wednesday, we got a notification that our AED department in the hospital was closed from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., which actually starts at 4 because they don't want to take patients before that doctor leaves. And then we received another notice for Thursday for the same time period. So for 30 hours last week, our emergency department was closed. That's unacceptable, and unacceptable. That cannot happen. I feel that closing the ERs or the emergency departments is becoming normalized. It's just a simple, you know what, we've done it in the past, we're going to do it in the future, and I feel that this is becoming too normal of a practice, and I believe that we should be writing a letter to the Premier, to our MLA, to the Minister of Health, Alberta Health Services, our hospital, anybody that we can talk to and listen to, because we need to start making ourselves known and being the squeaky wheel, because this is totally unacceptable that our emergency department keeps getting closed on a regular basis, and if we don't do anything, it's just going to keep getting closed. And unfortunately, the town of Rocky Mountain House has no bearing on this matter, because this is a provincial matter and it's a healthcare problem. But we are the ones that listen to the residents. The residents are the ones that talk to us and say, hey, why is your ED closed, and what are you going to do about it? Well, I think it's time that we write a letters, and don't just take, we're looking at it and we know there's a problem, we're going to take care of it. We need to keep doing this, and we need to get someone to fix this problem. I don't know what the solution is, but we have more doctors than ever in our municipality, and our ED is closed all the time, or not all the time, but enough times that it's a problem, and we never had this problem 8-10 years ago. So why is it a problem now? I did notice that Drayton Valley's ED was closed on Sunday night as well. So this is a problem that urgently needs to be taken care of.
Yes.
So I would suggest that we write letters again to the Premier, to the Minister of Health, to our MLA. We can't have this anymore. This is just unacceptable, period. And if there's a doctor available in Edmonton, I would expect someone to drive that doctor here to cover our emergency department. Like it's that simple. If I have a business and I have a franchise and I have 5 or 6 franchises, if one of those franchises is short-staffed, I will move staff amongst those businesses to cover a shortfall, and I don't see this any different. If there's a shortfall in Rocky Mountain House or Drayton Valley or wherever it happens to be, I would expect that someone from Red Deer or Edmonton, Calgary, wherever, could come here to cover that shift. So that's my concern about this, and sorry, I'm a little passionate about this. This is just unacceptable, period.
I also think that we need to write a letter to the Physicians Association, because they seem to be in charge of how many physicians are allowed into university and are allowed to practice in Alberta. And when we talk to Alberta Health, it takes a really long time for people who apply for jobs in Rocky, whether it be nursing or doctors, to get approval to work in the hospital. And I think that's an issue as well that could be part of like an ongoing problem. But if we're short doctors now and we're not training them, it takes, 7 or 10 years to get a doctor that could fill that position. I think we have to put some pressure on the physician association to start looking to solve the problem and quit having this monopoly on being able to get doctors working.
And I agree, that's a long-term solution, but right now, we're looking at a short-term solution of, if there isn't coverage in Rocky or Drayton or wherever that happens to be, and I'm only concerned about Rocky Mountain House right now, but if there's no coverage, I would expect someone to get in the car and drive here. I don't care where they're coming from, but someone needs to get in the car and drive here, because this isn't good, especially going into the summer holidays. We know that the population out west quintuples out
Yeah.
there on a weekend, and that puts even more demand on our emergency department. And if there's no doctor there, having someone travel an hour to get to our hospital just to find out that there's no doctor there and have to travel another hour to get to a different hospital is again, just, I'm gonna say the word unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable, and this has become normalized, and it's gotta stop.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mooskers had his light on. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Phillips, what do you envision? Just a letter from council or individually from councillors and the mayor to these different individuals that are responsible for our health care? So I'm just curious, what do you see?
I see a letter from our council. I would like to talk to, or have some discussion with Clearwater County as well, because this affects them. And I know I had a brief discussion with Reeve Swanson last week about this matter, and she was also concerned about it. So I would like to see, not just us sending a letter, I would like to see conversations had with Clearwater County, because it impacts their residents just as much as our residents. So I would like to see not just us, and perhaps our First Nations partners as well, because it affects them. If they're coming in from Ochese or Sunchild and they get to the ED department and it's closed, now they've got to go to Red Deer or Rimbey or Sundre. So it's not just our problem. Yes, I would like a letter from council, our council, but I do think Clearwater County and our First Nations partners should also be included in this.
Okay, so I'm gonna look to Mr. Kraus. So for us to do a letter, we've done that before. Can we just ask Clearwater County if they would like to make a joint letter with us? Do we have to write up the letter and see if they would just join in? Do we have to have a conversation? I think they're on the same page as us. It's frustrating for the entire community. And do we just send them a letter or like a note to say, would you like to join a joint email with us?
So, Your Worship, we would just draft a letter that would be jointly signed, and we would send it over administratively to Mr. Emmons to see if his council, or to bring to his council to see if they're willing to sign. So that will take a little bit more time to get the letter out, but that's fine.
So, in the meantime, did you want to send a letter now from us with saying that we feel a letter with our partners is to follow? Because then
I mean, that would be a discussion for council, for sure. I see this as a very urgent problem, and it's not something that's going away. I know, in dealing with our partners at Clearwater County, this may take a few weeks to be able to go in front of their council for them to decide yes. So, would I like to see a letter from us as well? Yeah, I would like to see both, a letter from us and a joint letter.
Okay, thank you. And so, would you like to make a resolution, Councillor Chappelle?
I would suggest just one letter, a joint letter from both councils, just so we don't murky the water.
Okay. That sounds fair. Councillor Moosker?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't see Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. The county has, their next meeting is July 9th, so I think that would give us, well, I guess I would ask admin, would that be enough time to get their letter to them to be on their agenda for the 9th meeting? Otherwise, their next meeting's not till the 23rd.
Yeah, Your Worship, yeah, I mean, we could drop one quickly and send it over. Their deadline for their council agenda is Wednesday noon, just like us, but I would let Mr. Emmons know, give him a heads up, and I'm sure he can add it.
Okay. And then, with our First Nations, I think, would it be okay that it came just from them? Because sometimes our First Nations with summer period, it might take longer. Would you be satisfied?
I would be fine with just a Rocky Clearwater County letter for now. I do realize that our First Nations partners would take a lot longer to get a consensus to get a letter forward. But when the letter is written up, I would like to see something worded a little more squeaky wheelish, for lack of a better word. Just not so nice and political that, you know, we're looking for a solution, just something that is very to the point. That this is
Direct.
urgent, this is unacceptable, and it's become normalized.
Councillor Musker, you had your light on, and then, did you still have something you wanted to add?
No, you actually addressed it, Your Worship, with mentioning the First Nations.
Okay. So, would you like to make a motion at this time?
Sure, I would happily make a motion. I'd make a motion to instruct administration to draft a letter and also include Clearwater County to have a joint letter sent to the Premier, Minister of Health, our MLA, Alberta Health Services regarding the closure at our ED.
Thank you very much. Could also add that it gets forwarded to our First Nation partners to say that we're frustrated with this, and this is the letter we're making from, and that we ask them to make a letter themselves to forward on about the services in locally, and then we don't have to wait, they could just do it on their own. Does that sound reasonable, Councillor Phillips?
I would defer to Mr. Kraus
Yeah,
on that one.
so, Your Worship, I think what we do is we draft it to the Premier, or send it to the Premier, and we CC the Minister of Health, our MLA, and First Nations in our area.
That sounds great. Is that, thank you for clarifying that. So the motion on the table then, for the letter to go to the Premier of Alberta as described. All in favor of that motion? And any opposed? And that motion has been carried. Thank you very much. So that concludes 9.5, and we're moving on the agenda to correspondence for information. Is there anything anybody wants to highlight for the information? Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. So we've got time, otherwise I would leave this to a later date, but the Community Events Committee, we had our first meeting. Very, very enthusiastic group. We were quite excited to get moving forward. We have put in a letter of expression of interest for a grant for Alberta Days. We should know, it said the week of July 1st, so I'm betting that's going to be last minute Friday before we find out. But lots of enthusiasm, just a really, really good group. I don't know if Councillor Capero wants to add anything to that, but it's exciting.
I think you said it perfectly. I agree with everything you said.
Thank you. And so those dates in the letter are August or September long weekend?
It is, but again, that's dependent on the funding, the grant funding. We could decide, we have our next meeting June 9th, I believe. So that's where we will go through and determine, kind of do more of a schedule on what else we would like to do, like parties in the playgrounds or something, Christmas light up or something along that line. We'll be moving forward with more of a schedule, which we would then bring back to council.
Okay. Is there any other items in correspondence for information anybody would like to discuss? Seeing none, would anybody like to make a motion? Councillor Hutchinson?
I'll make the motion to, oops, I just closed that page. Accept items 10.1 through to 10.10, correspondence for information.
Thank you very much. No further questions or comments on that motion. I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And that's and any opposed? And that's carried. So we're down to the action list for July 2nd, 2024. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just going through the outstanding items. So the first one, the airport terminal for an ICC meeting. That meeting has been scheduled, and I believe it's next week for that discussion. Service level discussion, council decided today, so that one's done. The discussion with the National Historic Sites for the landmark project, that's in progress right now. The non-residential clean energy improvement program is scheduled for September 10th GPC meeting, and the same with the community grant policy. The federal complement discussions, that's in progress. I've met with the staff sergeant. I'll prepare a report for council, and that is also scheduled to come back on the September 10th GPC. The flag policy is also scheduled to come back on September 10th GPC. I'll probably be working with the audit committee that we might move some of those up into the summer to even out workload for council. The McNutt subclass, the open house is scheduled, and a questionnaire has gone out to the residents. The next two are just tabled notice of motions from the mayor. And then the last one is just, again, the mid-sized town mayor's caucus terms of reference, and that's still in progress, I think, with the mayor.
I followed up with the mayor of Didsbury on Thursday at the Alberta Summer Caucus, IB Muni Summer Caucus. And they are having meeting by Zoom today. And we, of course, have council. So they haven't had any other meetings, but I will reach back out to her and see when the next scheduled meeting is. I think we're not getting the invitations because we didn't join in right away, but I will reach out to her and find out what's happening for that. If anybody has any questions on that action item, but that's where we stand for that one. Mr. Kroos, does anybody have any questions about the action list today? Did you have anything else to add, Mr. Kroos? Would anybody like to make a motion? Councillor Caprera.
Thank you. I will make a motion to accept the action list for July 2nd, 2024 as information.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any administrative inquiries today? Councillor Phillips?
Thank you. I just have one. I know I've talked about this before, the trees on the south end of town as our, the welcome to Rocky and the thank you for visiting Rocky signs. I know Councillor Shippold had mentioned that the landowner for the town, or the sign coming into town, is receptive to us doing some trimming in there and making that sign more visible. Just checking to see if we've reached out to that resident and see if we can do that.
So I've advised our Director of Engineering Operations of council's discussion, and he was going to reach out, and I'm not too sure if they have yet or not, but I could find out for council.
And just, I know on the other side of the road, the one leaving town is also starting to be overgrown. Is that another private individual, or is that Alberta Highways?
I would have to verify, but I will check into that.
Yeah, just that one is starting to become obscured.
Thank you very much. So if we have no further administrative inquiries today, seeing none, we can move forward. Do we have any, we do have a notice of motion. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to read my notice of motion. Be it resolved that council discuss eliminating the Municipal Planning Commission to expedite the planning and approval process for the town of Rocky Mountain House. So that's
Notice of motion.
that is the notice of motion itself.
Yep, perfect. And so do we have any other notices of motion? And so, Mr. Kroos, that notice of motion will just end up on the next agenda for discussion? Thank you. So seeing no other notices of motion, we'll have a brief 10-minute recess before we go into closed session. So Thank you very much. Welcome back to the regular council meeting for July 2nd, 2024. We have a number of closed session items today, so we need to move into closed session. Is anybody ready to make a motion? Councillor Chappelle?
I will still make that motion. We move into closed session.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that motion has been carried. We're now moving into closed session. Thank you. So we just come out of closed session, and we have two motions resulting from that. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. So be it resolved that council accepts Sarah Foddy to be assigned to the Community Events Committee. Appointed, pardon me, to the Community Events Committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. Any questions or comments about that motion? And seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? And that motion, and oppose, and that motion has been carried. So the second motion we have is myself, and so due to scheduling conflicts, the deputy mayor schedule has been adjusted from July 1st of 2024 to October 31st of 2024. The deputy mayor will be Councillor Marley Caprero, and then we will redo the schedule after that. All in favor of that? If there's no further questions or comments on that motion, all in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And so that motion is carried. So welcome back, Deputy Mayor Caprero, for the next 4 months. Thank you. And with that being said, we are going to take a brief recess before we go back into closed session, as we have a timed scheduled item. So we're going to have a brief recess. Thank you very much. So we're looking to go into closed session for one remaining item that was scheduled for 11. So I'm looking for a motion. Counselor Phillips.
I will make a motion that we go into closed session.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion? And any opposed? And that motion has been carried. So we are now moving into closed session. Thank you so much. We've just come out of closed session for the second time today, and we have one motion resulting from that. Counselor Phillips.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to postpone item 14.2 from today's closed session to the July 16th, 2024 meeting in closed session.
Thank you very much, Counselor Phillips. If there's no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And any opposed? And that's carried. And with that, it completes our business for today, and so we are now meeting adjourned.